there was Christianity and Judaism. So he went to a priest who was a good priest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have guided him to that priest, and he settled with that priest for a while. And he asked him about the faith, about Allah, and the priest told him Allah and things like that. And it was Christianity. But the priest mentioned for him something very important. He told him in Jazira al-Arab there will be a prophet, Ahmad. When that man comes, you should follow him. So Sayyidina Salman stayed with that priest for a while until he heard the news that there's a prophet was ascending in Jazira, in Hijaz, in Mecca. So he said, I have to go and see that man. And the priest gave him signs of how he can know that he is the prophet. Of course, on the way, he met a group of Arab traders from Bani Kalb. They took him with him, and sadly they betrayed him and they sold him for a Jew as a slave. And that Jew was living in Khaybar. And they come with him to Khaybar, and when he was in Medina, in Mecca, for a trip, for trading, he went on a journey alone without his master to check about the Prophet. They mentioned for him the Prophet. He went there, he asked him some questions, and then he knew that he's the correct Prophet, and he became a Muslim. And Sayyidina Muhammad salam, and say the story, and Abu Bakr, they bought him from the Jewish man and they gave him his freedom. And because, if you remember, Sayyidina Muhammad salam saw that Salman is lonely, he have no family. He said, Salmanu minna al-bayt. So he's one of al-bayt. And Salman Al-Farsi was a great fighter. That's why when Ma'arakat al-Khandaq happened, if you know about Ma'arakat al-Khandaq, the trench battle, Salman Al-Farsi was a great fighter. So Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam set a plan. And look over here, the democracy in Islam, and how Sayyidina Muhammad, he's a prophet, but he doesn't have a problem taking advices. So Sayyidina Salman jumps up and says, Ya Rasulullah, هذه منزلة منزلتها أم هي الحرب والخديعة? If this is a plan that God have told you to do, or this is only the plan of war? He said, no, that's the plan of war. He said, that's not the plan of war. Let me plan for you the war. Rasul told him, Ya Salman, تقدم. And he agreed with them to make a tranche. And of course we know that at that time, when the Muslims, they saw the enemies coming, بلغت القلوب الحناجر. They were very frightened that sometimes when you get frightened, your heart comes too much to your throat, you feel like that. They felt that, they were very scared. And there was a man in Quraysh, 73 years, he was a butcher, he was a barbarian. No one could fight him. They were very frightened. And when he went out for Mubarazah, the Mubarazah in every battle, you send one of your strongest men, and he asked someone to come and fight him. He stood there and he said, who will fight me? Who will come to me? And Sayyidina Muhammad, Umar ibn Khattab, go. He said, سامحني يا رسول الله, I can't. Umar, I can't. Came to Abu Bakr, I can't. Who stood for him? Ali. Ali, a small boy, 16 years. He went to him, and when he saw Ali, he laughed. A small boy coming to fight me. شوفوا how he's looking this way, that you're a small boy. And Sayyidina Ali looked at him like that, took his sword out, and he came with his horse to attack Sayyidina Ali. Sayyidina Ali with a strong hit, he hit the horse, cut the legs of the horse and the legs of that man. He fell on the ground. Sayyidina Ali came to him, took the sword, wanted to cut his head. He spat at Sayyidina Ali. So Sayyidina Ali put the spat and moved back. And he said, are you coward? He said, no, I'm not a coward. But if I kill you at that moment, they will say I killed you because I took revenge for you spitting on me. But I went back a few yards just to astaghfirullah and to go back and kill you in the name of Allah and for Islam, not for me. He comes back and they kill him. The minute he killed him, everything was changed. Allah made the kuffar very scared, very frightened. They didn't know what to do. And they start speaking in between them. And Al-Furqa came, the division. So they start pulling out, subhanallah. And that was a great victory for the Muslims. And the Muslims calmed down. وَكَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ كَثِيرًا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How many small groups have won battles against big groups? And that's in the name of God. Because they fought it. And that is mentioned in the Torah and the Injil. So Sayyidina Salman was one of the fighters who was there. He was the one who made the trench thing. And of course, in Ma'arakat al-Qadisiyya, if you know it, when the Muslims went and attacked the Persians, and Sayyidina Umar took over al-Qadisiyya and al-Mada'in, he said, Salman al-Farsi, wali ala al-Mada'in. Why he said Salman Al-Farsi? Because he's Persian. He can speak to the Persians. Look how Muslims think at that time. That I bring someone from the same language, he can deal with these people, from the same habits. Arabs were different. Some of them were living in tents. Al-Madain was Persia, was a great civilization. And the civilization, when it's great, and you come for people who came from tents, some of them and things, it will be different. But when you set someone for them from their own people, they will trust him. And this is how Islam, subhanAllah, went over. That's all because of this companion of Rasul alayhi Salman Al-Farsi.
I'll just add a few things, Jazakallah khair. Salman Al-Farsi, when he was asked, what is your nasab? His original name is Ruzba. So his Persian name was Ruzba. And he was the son of a Zoroastrian fire worshipper who was the priest of the time who was in charge of keeping the flame going. When he was asked, what is your name? He said, Ana Salman ibn al-Islam ibn Adam. My nasab is Salman, the son of Islam. And this is an attribution to his allegiance to Allah, to the allegiance to his Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of the important things that I want to point out to you. Salman is the first person to translate the Quran in a language other than Arabic. He was the first person to translate the word of Allah, and that's where we get the permission to translate the word of Allah. We have the amal of the Sahabi who translated into Persian. Not just orally, not just, he said, this verse means, but actually commissioned its writing down. Second thing about Salman is that he was put in charge, as we heard, of Al-Madain by the Prophet Muhammad's instruction very early on, and through the commission of Umar ibn al-Khattab in the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And they had the foresight to choose him because he knows the people in the land. But one of the things that's equally important is that you find that Salman is very influential within the Shia community. And he's seen as being someone who's a very influential person, and there will be dispute as to where he's actually buried. So with Shia sources, they will say he's buried in Al-Madain, which is in Iraq. And that's why if you were to Google it online, you say, hold on, I thought Salman is buried in Iraq somewhere, which they say is close to where Ali was, and so on and so on and so forth. Another important thing to point out to you about Salman radiallahu anhu wa arda is that he was given the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not through birthright but through love. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam held Salman in the day of Al-Khandaq, and he said, Salmanu minni wa ana minhu. He is me, he is of me, of my family, and I am of his family. So we actually consider Salman radiallahu anhu and his descendants to be from the Ahl al-Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not through blood, but through spiritual leaning. Radiallahu anhu wa arda. The last thing that I'll mention is the great city of Kufa was going to be the new city where Muslims wanted to build a new city within the area of Iraq. The site was given to be chosen by Salman, by Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu arda. He said to him, Anta a'lamu bihadihi al-ard. You know this land better than others. Where's the right place for us to build a city that will house its ulama and that will be able to feed its people without relying on other cities? So Salman radiallahu anhu, he came to what is now referred to as the city of Al-Kufa in Al-Iraq. There's so much, wallahi, to be said about Salman and his journey and his sacrifice to come to be near the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the most significant thing that I think that I want to mention is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one who paid his freedom. So Abu Bakr paid for the freedom of Bilal, right? He paid for the freedom of others. But it's rare that you have that the Prophet ﷺ did 3 types of freedoms for Salman. He spoke out for him to be free, to make his contract of freedom. He paid in silver 1,600 coins to pay for his freedom. And then the Prophet did physical labor for him. Could you imagine the Prophet ﷺ served on behalf of Salman? So the condition of Salman to be set free, it was an unattainable, the master didn't want to say to the Prophet ﷺ, I'll never let him go. But he said, I'll let him go if he does this, which is something no one can do. That he plants 300 date trees and all of them are to fruit. I can't even plant mint. I got it to fruit. I go, man, where's the mint? So Salman, was devastated. And the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, gather the wealth, gather the coins, 1,600, okay, we got it, we'll give it. So the Prophet gave him 1,600 silver coins, which is a huge number by today's estimate. Don't look at the value of silver today as it was then. It was a commodity of zakat. That's how significant it was. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, let's gather the 300 date saplings so that we can plant it. And then the Prophet prohibited Salman from planting it himself. And the Prophet ﷺ said, dig the 300 holes and I will do it. Have you ever tried to plant anything? It's a lot of work. So the Prophet ﷺ, over the course of a few days, planted with his own hands 300 trees that all of them blossomed and fruited and gave Salman radiallahu anhu his freedom. When you visit Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara, there is still until today the estate of Salman radiallahu anhu, and the offspring of those trees are still there. You can still purchase from its dates, and they are a testament. What is, it's a significant kind of contribution of the Prophet ﷺ on behalf of a man that he loved, who he said is from my family and I am from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.